In this video, I'm going to show you how to use a sequencer which was designed in combination with Harmony Space to arpeggiate notes. To allow the sequencer to work, you have to go to the hardware menu and choose Start OSC In. You also have to select a chord first, or the sequencer won't have any notes to actually choose from. The sequencer has a lot of features which I will walk you through now. To start with, to turn on and off the sequencer, it's the toggle at the top left of the screen here. So you can choose the tempo of the sequencer in beats per minute. You can choose how many steps there is. At the moment it's 16, but I can turn this up to 32. However, if it's longer, you want to make sure you drag over this grey area to the end if you actually want 32 beats, and draw some notes in. You can also choose the direction of the sequencer. So this can be forward through the sequencer, it can be backwards, it can be forwards then backwards, or it could be entirely random, as I can show you now. You can also select the interval or rate of the sequencer. For example, this can be fourth notes, it can be fourth note triplets, it can be eighth notes, all the way up to 128 notes. Then on the right of this, there's a select mode. So this is channel and velocity. So channel allows you to select the notes that you want. If you don't want the sequencer to do anything, put all of these little boxes down to the very bottom, and this will mean the sequencer won't produce any outcome. If you want to trigger channel 1 whenever it goes to the sequence, you move these boxes up here to this space here, and then if you want channel 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. The other mode is velocity. This allows you to choose a specific velocity for each note. For example, if this is all the way up, every note will be as loud as possible. If this is turned all the way down, you won't actually hear any of the notes. And then you can customize this as much as you like, so every note can have a different velocity. On the right then, there's probability the channels will actually be triggered. This is automatically set to 100%, which means every time a note is selected, it will be triggered. However, you can change this to whatever you like. So you could change channel 6 to a probability of 50%. That means each time the sequencer lands on channel 6, as it does so here, there's a 50% likelihood this note will be triggered. And each channel can have its own probability programmed in. Or if you want, you can choose a master probability which changes all of these. So if I change this to 60, for example, all of the probabilities for each channel will also be changed to 60. Another feature at the top here is select sequence for player 1 or player 2, as the sequencer allows you to have different sequences for player 1 or player 2. Player 2 works the exact same way, however this will only affect the bass movement. At the moment actually this won't do anything, as I'm just triggering chords for player 1. So to make this happen, you want to set up your Xbox controller for player 2 or bass movement. And when you begin selecting chords with the Xbox, this sequence will then start triggering channels from that chord. So now I can move down below here and show you some more of the features. So here, bottom left, this has to do with velocity. If you choose velocity mode here, it will work as I was showing you, where you can actually choose specific velocities for every note here. However, I also added a random velocity mode, which you can select by choosing random velocity. And this allows you to add random velocities to each of the notes. And you can choose a specific range to choose from. So here, I'll drag the cursor into this box, and the range is 0 to 55. And you can visualize this movement here in the number box just below random velocity. Then to the right of this is the preset area. It is possible to save, store, and load presets. This is useful for switching between different setups. To save a preset, you click store 1, 2, 3, or 4, and you will see the preset object will actually change color when you do so. You can pretty much add anything to the preset object, so you can actually change the number of steps you want, or you can change the tempo of a specific preset. You can then use these circles on the right of this to switch between the presets. So as you can see, it's switching between the different presets that I stored into the device. And also here, if you want to delete them, you can do so. On the right then I actually added another sequencer which allows you to sequence through the different presets. So this sequencer doesn't move as quickly as this one. It only moves the next step when the end of the sequence has been reached. This functionality doesn't have to be in place all the time, so you can turn this feature on and off using this toggle here. I can now show you what this actually looks like, so I'll turn this feature on, and you'll see here I've selected just preset 1 and preset 2. This means every time it'll reach the end of the sequence, it will jump to preset 1 or preset 2. I'll show you how this works now. So sequencer on. Of course, you don't have to use this feature. You can just load in presets manually. And I've actually added one more feature to do with manual loading. So you can choose between load anytime or load at end of the sequence. So load anytime means as soon as you click the button, it will load another preset. However, rather than doing this, you can say only load at the end of the sequence. And this means whenever you click on one of these, it won't change until the sequencer reaches the end of the sequence. As you can see there. One last thing to do with the presets is you can actually store them and write them to disk. You do this by clicking write and then giving it a name. And this will save it to disk. This means when you close the session and come back to it, you can then go read and you can find the file that you saved to disk, and the sequencer will be set up exactly like you had it before. Beside this, you have the output section. This is really just to visualize what's going on in the sequencer. So this tells you what step the sequence is on, what channel that step triggers, and what the velocity that step is also triggering. Below this, you have the mapping functionality. By clicking on key 1, you can map your keyboard to any of the parameters in the sequencer. So for example, click on one of these orange spaces and press H, then press escape, and whenever you press H, that button will be mapped to the H key. The MIDI one is the same. However, rather than mapping your keyboard to these parameters, you can map a hardware controller. So for example, you want to trigger different presets with the pad-based controllers. You click on these and then click on one of the pads, and that will instantly be mapped to your controller. Finally, at the very bottom right, we have the turn on and off next chord trigger. This works with curated chords in harmony space. When this is turned on, whenever the sequencer reaches the end of the sequence, it will jump to the next curated chords. And I can actually show you what this sounds like now. And as you can see, there's lots of chord movement going on, even though I wasn't manually selecting different chords in harmony space.